Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Welcome to Startup Grind Columbia, Female Founders Month.
Welcome. My name's Chris Haug. I'm chapter director of the Columbia Mid-Maryland chapter of our very own Startup Grind. We are the world's largest global community of entrepreneurs, founders, startups, educators, investors, and thought leaders dealing with everything that has to do with entrepreneurship. And I truly believe that everybody who leaves one of these events goes away more educated, more inspired, and more connected than they walked in. This is Female Founders Month, and we're doing all things related to helping promote and support female entrepreneurs and founders. And tonight, we have two female founders who are our guests. So, without further ado, I would like to bring up our featured fireside guest tonight. She is a lady who I have known many years, going back to my early days with the Howard Tech Council and Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship. Miss Julie Lenzer, come on up. A little bit about Julie. She was recently asked and was tapped to by the University of Maryland to leverage her national and her international experience, her love of innovation and entrepreneurship, her contacts and connections in and out of the federal government, and her work as a serial entrepreneur to help the University of Maryland grow its innovation and economic development activities at College Park. I think I said that right. Okay, good. And she was also named as the co-director for, I think it's called Ventures. Am I correct? Okay. Prior to that, she was asked to serve a stint in the U.S. Department of Commerce as the chief liaison and head for the Economic Development Administration, where she was responsible for driving policies and programs that supported innovation-based entrepreneurship, not only nationwide, but also internationally, if I'm not correct. Okay. Prior to that, she was the executive director for the Howard Tech Council and the Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship. And before that, she was an award-winning serial entrepreneur who founded her first company called Applied Creative Technologies, which was an IT solutions firm focusing on manufacturing operations and inventory control. We'll get into more of that in a minute. She's been awarded a couple of small things. Number one, in 2014, she was the 2014 Influential Marylander, 2013 Trailblazer in Technology, and AT&T's Innovator of the Year in 2011. She received designation as winner of Smart CEO's Bravo Awards in 2014, the Athena Award in 2004, was named Maryland's Top 100 Women 2005, 2008, 2014, at which time she joined the Circle of Excellence for sustained service to the entrepreneurial community. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Startup Grind welcome, Julie Lenzer.
What I did is I talked a little bit about my journey as an entrepreneur and through this very, what I thought was a very eclectic career, very strangely woven together to land me where I am today. But through all of that, I really saw some lessons that, so I pulled out some lessons for all entrepreneurs and even just folks who are entrepreneuring their life, because that's a thing, because you can take control of your life as well. So my kind of loose roadmap, and I say it's loose because like probably many of you entrepreneurs, I'm ADD. So I take license to go wherever I damn well please. So that's why it's a loose roadmap. I'm talking about where I've been, what I've learned, and why do you care? How does that apply to you? And hopefully there's something in here that you can relate to or something that's helpful. So those of you who recognize that thing on the desk, that is a phone, that's a computer, and that's a dot matrix printer. That was my first desk when I graduated from college and went to work for IBM. And those little newspaper clippings are when the Dallas Cowboys whooped the Redskins. So that's what was hanging on. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm from Dallas. So, but what was really interesting is when I got out of college, I went to work for IBM, and I thought I was just playing in the big leagues. I thought, I actually thought I was going to retire with IBM. That was back when you actually went to work at a place and you thought you were going to retire. And I couldn't find a picture of me in one of those stupid floppy ties. Those of you who are old enough remember, some people are laughing because they were just hideous. It would have been really funny. But instead, I found a really ugly sweater for you. One of the first lessons that I learned, I was just out of college, and the marketing rep is the guy behind me who you can tell he's a marketing rep because he has his hand on the bag of dog food and is taking full credit for supporting it, even though he's not. So he took all the credit. I did all the work. He took me into the Imes company, and they had a vendor that was designing a system for them, and it was basically a really bad design. And he said, let's go in and see if we can take this business away. So I walked in, and mind you, I was probably, I wasn't 15. I was probably 23, so right out of college. And I walk into this room, and this older gentleman is sitting there, and he looks at the marketing rep, and he looks at me, and he said, what is she doing here? I'm like, is he talking to me? Now, at that moment, I could have been really offended. I could have been, or I could have been upset. And but I and I don't know if this was growing up with three brothers or working in manufacturing or anything, but I just kind of looked at him and I said, I'm here because whoever designed this system that you have, that you're contemplating, they really suck, and I'm going to show you how to do it right. Now, it wasn't arrogance, it was just truth. It was ignoring the obstacle that was in front of me, because how many times do people tell you, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Or they look at you like they think that, that they're thinking that, you don't belong here. And so that was one of the things, just ignoring those obstacles and kind of seeing around them. And the way I looked at it is that this guy was just not informed. It wasn't my problem, it was his. And so that's one of the pieces. And also, don't let your mother pick out your sweaters for you. And then this was actually in one of their newsletters. Ugh. Hideous. Then from there, from bad sweaters, I went to a bad haircut, and I started my own company. And if you can't find me, that's fine. You don't need to find me then. Bad sweater, bad haircut, whatever. This was my company, Applied Creative Technologies. I say we were data analytics before it was a thing, because our tagline was turning plant floor data into actionable information. Right? That was 2005. Is when we sold the company. So we started in 1995. It was way before you had this. But so I ventured out on my own. And, very quickly, once you do, now raise your hand, entrepreneurs who have a growing company or going company. Hopefully that's everybody or almost everybody. Everybody else then supporting entrepreneurs, providing support for entrepreneurs as much as possible. So that very often it comes the time that you have in your own head, what am I doing here? Imposter syndrome. Anybody ever had that? Because if you hadn't, you're lying, because I have it all the time still, right? And this was actually coined through our Activate class, one of the classes that I taught in between. RT is here, raise your hand. She was one of my students. It was fake it till you make it. And it doesn't mean, necessarily lying or making something up. It just means pretend as if somebody asks you a question you don't know, you say, I don't know. But you just keep going. It's about kind of pretending like you belong there, and then eventually you might. No, you will. You do. So the other thing, knowing and using your strengths. Entrepreneurship is like holding up a mirror to your face. You see the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because you're the only one to do it. So you learn quickly what you're good at, what you're bad at, and what you really don't want to do. I was a horrible project manager. I just didn't, the detail, I'm too ADD. I needed somebody that could really drive milestones and details. So knowing and using your strengths is really important. And then this is something that your advisors probably tell you, how important it is to work on your business and not just in it. And if you haven't read the E-Myth Revisited, it's a great book that talks about how do you work on your business and the importance of it, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people that can help you. Because it usually takes three different types of people. It's the manager, the entrepreneur, and the technician to run a company. And generally, people are 2 out of 3, not all 3. I'm definitely the entrepreneur and the technician. I'm not the manager, although I've gotten really good at managing political situations, and I'll talk about that in a second. I'm not, it's something I am now proud of, because it was a hard problem that needed to be solved. I entrepreneured the hell out of it. So, after I cashed out of my company in 2005. I had an opportunity to publish a book. I was approached by John Wiley. I had been working on a book, and the story about how this happened is a longer story, but it's called The Parentpreneur Edge: What Parenting Teaches About Building a Successful Business, and it was published by John Wiley in 2007. Still relevant today. It's still on Amazon. I think you can get it, or on the Kindle. But what was really interesting about this is that this was one of those things that you said out loud, and somebody said, "What are you going to do when you're done with your company?" And I said, "Oh, I'm writing a book." Did I just say that out loud? Wait, you guys have had that moment, right? Be careful what you speak. That was 2005. In the next year, I got a call from the woman that I said this to. She said she had somebody from Wiley that was interested in a book that was like what I was writing. But here's the really interesting part about that. In 2002, my father was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he was 58 years old. And I was with him when he found out that his cancer was terminal. And he was sitting there, and he kept saying, "There's so much left to do. There's so much left to do." And I said, "Daddy, what do you want to do?" I'm from Texas. We still call our dad Daddy even when we're 55 or whatever we are. He said, "I want to write a book." I said, "I kind of do too. What do you want to write a book about, Dad? I'm going to help you write it." And he said, "I want to write a book about Howard the Duck." And I said, "All right, I'm going to help you do that." Well, unfortunately, he died about a month later, so we never got a chance to write his book. But I knew it was something that I really wanted to do. So I got the contract with Wiley a couple years later. They sent me the design for my book cover. And that story about my dad was not in my book. I had not shared that story with them. And they put a duck on the cover of my book. And I said, "What made you put a duck on the cover?" And they said, "Well, we needed something that wasn't a male, female, boy, girl. And, we thought about a train, but we liked the duck better." And I said, "Yeah, I like the duck better too." And it's actually on every page. And so if you ever doubt that it's all connected, don't. You can find the connections everywhere, from speaking something into being, like I'm writing a book, to finding your dad on the cover of your book. It's pretty crazy. So challenging the status quo. This is how I introduced my foray into the Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship. Because prior to this, I told myself and everyone else that I was not employable. I said, "I can't work for anybody else." How many of you think that? Entrepreneurs think that you are not employable. Well, I was working for the Women Presidents Organization. I was actually running the DC chapter at the time, and they had us do all these different like disc profiles, and this one was the Berkman. Anybody heard of the Berkman? It's one of the many personality profiles. And first thing she said when she was debriefing me on my profile, she said, "First of all, you're going crazy working from home, aren't you?" Yeah, I am. I had been working at home then for 7 years. And so she also said, she goes, "You'll make a great employee if you can find a place where you're aligned with the vision and you're given the latitude to do what you need to do." And so then Laura Newman came calling for the Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship. So I was basically, this used to be called the Neotech Incubator. And so when I came in is when we rebranded and launched the Maryland Center for Entrepreneurship. And so the quotes on the wall, everything that you see, that was the lipstick on the pig of this ugly, ugly building, trying to make it into a fun place. They've continued to try and make, funky stuff. And I'm really proud of what we accomplished in the 2.5 years that I was here. And Jeannie, look, you're in there. Do you see? That's like one of the first Howard Tech Council events.
I'm in there too.
Tracy's in there too. Where are you, Tracy?
It's my head.
Oh, Tracy's head. That's Jill's head at the very bottom. Anyway, so any of you ever see the Startup Maryland bus? That was another example of, we were sitting in the conference room over at the Gateway building here when I was at Howard County, and we were talking, Mike Binko and I were talking, and we were talking about doing this bus thing, and Laura Newman looked at me and said, I think it's so cute that you think you can get a bus. Really? Game on. We found a bus, and we launched the bus tour across the state, and that was, 5 years ago, and now they've done it for 4 years. I was there with the first two, so Mike and I created it. If you're familiar with it, we put a thing on the back, the video on the back of the bus. Under Armour, that was the first year we went and visited Kevin Plank at Under Armour, and then because of the success of what we did there, we got invited. That's the Indian Treaty Room at the White House. We got invited to do a briefing at the White House. Little did I know, again, foreshadowing, that I would end up working there. I had no idea, honestly. And in fact, when Laura went over to become Anne Arundel County executive, we were having dinner one time, and she said, do you think you want to run for office someday? I'm like, oh, no, hell no. And then I said, but I might consider a political appointment. 3 weeks later, I got a call. I was still working here, love my job, love my team, still miss my team every day, Tracy. Love my job here. But I got a call, says, I'm from the Secretary of Commerce's office, and we have this position, and he started describing all the elements of it. And I'm thinking to myself, first I thought, he's calling me to see who I know that would fit this profile, right? He's calling me for referrals. And so I'm thinking through my mind, who do I know? And then the more he's talking, I'm like, that's a lot like my background. I wonder if he would consider me for this position. And then he said, and Lisa Mitchell at the Kauffman Foundation said you would be the perfect person for this job. And I was like, whoa, okay. And one of the things that I'd promised myself, and I talk about this later, is that I would follow every thread. So I went ahead and answered the call. But what's interesting is even after my first interview, I left that interview and I said, this is not the job for me. I was very depressed. I'm sitting there in the elevator looking at the great logo and stuff, the presidential logo. I said, this isn't the job for me. And then I said, well, wait a minute. How could it be the job for me? And so I thought about it on my way over from the Commerce Department to over by where the Nats play. There's a trapeze place. I was going to trapeze lessons. I can't make this up. And as I'm on my way over, I'm like, well, what could I do to make it my job? And so I emailed them when I got there in between my trapeze flight. And I said, here's, if this is what you're looking for, I'm not your person. But if this is the way you could see this job rolling out, then let's continue talking. And they responded and said, let's schedule an interview. So you never know about when somebody presents you with something, think about how you can make it your own. And then go back. You never know. They have an objective, and maybe they just didn't articulate it, or their idea is not exactly aligned, but maybe you can come to something. So I'm going to wrap this up here because I know we need to. So this was an incredible opportunity. So here, upper right, I got to speak at the Library of Congress. Upper left is I'm speaking at the State House in Vermont, which was really cool. I have a selfie. I did a selfie with everybody behind me. That's in the Commerce Library at Columbia University. And then, we got to do things. I got to do a briefing at the at the South Auditorium of the White House, South Court Auditorium of the White House. We got to visit Camp David twice on retreats. And the fun thing about that picture in front of the Oval Office in front of the desk is that was actually taken by the Chief of Staff, the President's Chief of Staff. I was there for a leadership program, and he sat and took everybody's picture in front of the desk. So I have pictures of him taking it just because nobody would believe it. But this is a National Advisory Committee. The other thing that I really learned is that influence, power is way more leverageable and important than authority. Because how many times you might have authority over your employees, but you ain't got no authority over your customers or over your partners. So the power of influence, and maybe we can talk more about some of that. Saying yes. So while I was at the Commerce Department, we deployed about $40 million across the United States to help commercialize technologies. And based on the success of that program, I got asked, somebody called me up and said, the White House had asked Commerce to take over the negotiations for the G20. And one of the task forces around innovation, would you be our lead for innovation at the G20? And I said, you're talking to Julie, right? Julie Lenzer? Is that who you meant to call? what do I know about international diplomacy and negotiations around innovation and IP? But the gentleman that was kind of going to be working with me had done a lot of negotiations in Cuba and for some of our other trade agreements. And he said, no, I'll help you. I'll be right there with you. I can help you with, I said, you just need to make sure I'm not going to start some kind of war, because China was the host this year. So I got to go to China. I got to negotiate, and my favorite part of this was not going to China 3 times last year, because I could never I don't have to ever step foot in Beijing again because of the traffic and the smog. But I got to say, I'm sorry, the U.S. cannot agree to that. It was awesome. I got to speak on behalf of the U.S., and then Germany said, I concur. And then the U.K. said, I concur with the U.S. And it was just a really weird feeling sitting there. So, and then as a result, I got to go facilitate a session at the World Economic Forum as well. So saying yes, and then following every thread as they come to you. Which is how I ended up coming home to the University of Maryland. And I originally had said, the summer before, so I knew it was a term appointment, so I knew it was coming to an end at the end of the administration. We were told we had to resign and had to leave no later than noon on January 20th. It happens every presidential election. It's not anything special. Everybody knew we had to leave. So the summer before, you start looking, kind of putting feelers out and stuff, and I said, I'm going to follow every thread, but I'm pretty sure I don't want to go into academia. I got to watch what I say, because that's exactly where I ended up. I got the call from the University of Maryland, and what they've asked me to come in and do is unleash innovation. So, and do we have any alum here? Do we have any Terps in the room? All right. So it's an incredible school. It's an incredible university. But when it comes to economic and social impact, we could do a lot better. And bringing the programs together, there's a lot of great programs, but the problem is there's a lot of great programs. How do you bring them together? And how do you unleash the innovation that's there? And so that's what I'm doing now. Fighting against fiefdoms, because I thought that the politics and the bureaucracy was bad in the federal government. They got nothing over academia. But it's just an interesting environment, and talk about influential power, really having a look at that. So as I said, common goal, we're activating fearless ideas. And the only way that I can bring all these people together is around the why. Why do you do what you do? And I can stop here because I wanted to get into more of a conversation, and we can talk about any of that or things that Chris hasn't even told me about. How's that? I can tell you why I do it. My common why is I am passionate about helping people get out of their own way to achieve that which they never knew that they could do. I see this as a way to encouraging entrepreneurship for people to take control of their own future, their own livelihood, their own fate, and it's in their own hands, and help them to get, because most of the time we are our own worst enemy. We are in our way. And so that's what really drives me. That's my why.
Wow.
It was a lot, sorry.
I know.
Fire hose. I should have given you a fire hose warning.
It's interesting. I found out about, there are certain things in life that happen for a reason, and we don't know what it is, and you alluded to this a little bit ago on in a number of different venues. And I was sitting at my desk one Saturday morning, doing my normal Saturday morning routine after having come off a very, very, let's just say, stressful assignment. And I had forced myself to take a couple of months off. And I was sitting there thinking, what in the devil am I going to do? And literally, many of the same things that you said a little bit ago were running through my mind. And that is, you know what? I can do anything I want. Why? Because I'm me. And so that Saturday morning, I was sitting at my desk, and across my email inbox comes a an email that says, we're looking for a few outstanding individuals to start chapters in select locations. And when I looked at that email, I thought, spam. Don't ask me why I didn't delete it, but I didn't come back to it until a week later. I said, well, let me look and see what the Startup Grind organization is all about. Well, to make a very long story short, it took me all of 30 seconds to look at their mission, their vision, their core values, and recognize that they align perfectly. Literally, we're cut out of the same mold. You start out, what's your why? I ask every one of my clients, what's your why? Don't tell me what you do, because I can see that on your business card, your logo, etc. Why do you do what you do? And my why is because I'm an entrepreneurial evangelist. I've been a serial entrepreneur since 1995. And I'll tell you what, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that gets me out of bed quicker in the morning with a heart full of joy and a positive mental attitude than knowing that I have an opportunity to help another entrepreneur do something a little bit better just for the day. And if I'm able to do that a little bit at a time, day in and day out, then I think I will have been able to play some small role in helping someone become phenomenally successful. That's why I do what I do. And I have learned that the more unabashed and open and evangelistic I am about it, the more the opportunities come out of it from wherever. And it's about giving for giving's sake with no expectation of return. So I'm not preaching, but what happened is that's exactly what happened with me in Startup Grind. From that point in time, there has not been a problem. Anything that has come up that's been a little hitch in the road, solved beautifully. So there are those moments and those situations in people's lives, particularly we as entrepreneurs, where things were meant to be. And that's why I'm sitting up here instead of being at a bar having a drink. Let's go back. You were born and raised in Texas. Where?
Dallas.
I won't hold that against you.
Go Cowboys.
I spent some time in Corpus Christi. So, and you went to Texas A&M, and you studied computer science and engineering, or just computer science?
It was computer science in the engineering school, so I was actually on the Student Engineering Council.
Okay.
Yes. I am a geek, and I'm proud.
So tell us a little bit about Julie growing up. Who was Julie growing up, and what happened in your life, and what were some of the significant influencers early on? Well,
so it's funny because when I thought about leaving IBM to start my own company, I didn't think I was an entrepreneur. And my dad reminded me that I had forgotten about this. So back when I was a kid, you could actually go and sell stuff door to door. And you could order a catalog, and you could go door to door and sell out of that catalog and get a commission from whatever you sold. I actually did that at one point. I didn't make any money. I don't think I made much money, if I made any. But then I started throwing carnivals in my backyard. So I would pop popcorn, I would make lemonade, I would draw a penny toss on the driveway, and kids would actually pay me a nickel to spin them around in my dad's recliner that I pulled out on the driveway. A nickel for a spin. And, so I guess I had those entrepreneurial bents early on, but I guess I had forgotten about it, until my dad helped me remember. My dad was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur in insurance. My dad was a value engineering. He actually went and did the original, how do you save money on electricity, that they do now. I mean, he was doing that 30 years ago. And he had a sign in his office that I remember to this day that I loved, and it said tact. The ability to tell someone to go to hell and make them feel happy as they go along their way. And I've always remembered to try and be tactful. Not that I'm telling people to go to hell, No, not that I'm telling anybody to go to, but just to be able to, and I actually, took that from my grandfather and my father were both, the Lenzers actually go back to vaudeville. We have a history of vaudeville performers, so it's not surprising probably that I'm comfortable talking. For those of you who know me, know that's true. But they both love to present. My dad actually once gave a presentation in Japan in all Japanese. He spoke, and he didn't speak Japanese. He actually learned enough to give this presentation in Japanese. I'm like, yeah, I'm lucky I can speak English. So I'm the oldest of 4. I have 3 younger brothers. So that, I guess being the oldest, I went to all-girl high school. That explains a lot, too. Yeah. Explains a lot.
You've had a wonderful career doing a lot of different things. As entrepreneurs, there's the flip side. That's why we have, at the tail end of startup, grind.
Oh.
Which
I've failed tons of times.
So, one of the things that we try to do is to celebrate success when it's due. And obviously, Julie and everybody else who has gone on to have a highly successful business or a highly successful career, no matter what it may be. But there's the flip side. And that flip side is, what are all the tragedies? What are all the heartbreaks? What are all the disappointments, depression, the fear, the anxiety, the worry that every single one of us goes through? And that's not talked about a lot, but it's something that has to be talked about for us to be able to help one another, because it's very real.
I failed so many times. We had something in my company called JFU. Julie, up.
So
JFU, keep moving. Okay, keep going. Who cares?
So think back to some of those moments and give us a sense of what happened, how you felt, how you handled it, and the lesson you learned on the flip side.
Oh, there's lots of them. So growing my company was my first time as a manager. Never had any management training before, and here I am now, owner of the company. And this was, back in the mid-90s, so you didn't have programs like this. You didn't have mentors, or you didn't know where to find mentors. My dad was kind of my mentor. So hiring people was a bit of a challenge because especially when I started to hire managers. So when we started to grow and I had to hire managers, I thought I had to hire somebody that had a lot of management experience. And it was all about the experience. And so I was hiring a development manager because I was actually one of the original developers. I developed about 50% of the first version of the code that went to market. So to give that up was really hard, to kind of give up that control of the technology and stuff. So we had to hire a manager, and I had all of the people all the developers actually interview with him. I mean, so this was not just a Julie decision. I tend to see the best in people, which means I'm not always the best. I don't always hire the best people because I see their best, not necessarily what they bring to work every day. And there's a difference sometimes. And so we all interviewed with him. And then when he got him in, we realized quickly that it probably wasn't a good fit. He would get upset at me because, this was when we were maybe 12 people at the time. And I had gone, we had all grown up together, if you will, in the company. And I would go in and talk to one of my developers and say, oh, how's your, girlfriend? How's your kid? How's your wife? Whatever. Oh, where are you with this? Just to kind of get a status update. And he felt like I was going around him because he had never really worked for a startup. He said he could work in a startup, but he hadn't ever worked in a startup. There's a big difference. People who've worked in a big company don't necessarily know what it's like to work in a startup. So this was about the time that I found out my dad was dying of cancer. And in fact, I had just come back from the trip where I found out my dad was terminal. And he called a meeting. And I had just had to fire my marketing person. She had been there for 5 weeks, and I found out that her husband was writing all of her marketing copy, and that it wasn't even very good. And she really was not. This was not her job. She just couldn't do what I needed her to do. She needed too much hand-holding, and he like proceeded to, we had a meeting and I had another manager in there at the same time, and he quit about the same time I fired him in the same meeting. You know how sometimes that happens, right? You know, it just got very heated. And at the time I still took things very personally. So I'm feeling like crap about myself because, you know, I shouldn't have hired him, you know. And so the prior Christmas, he had given me this nice little bamboo thing on my desk, very beautiful bamboo garden. The other manager went out with him to clean out his desk, and he came back in and poked his head in the office and said, he said he left something in here. I'm like, what? And he came and got the bamboo off my desk and took it back. I was like, what? He took back the Christmas gift he'd given me. And men are like that. I'm not going to go there. Yeah, I did. But what was interesting is that everybody in the company knew he needed to go. I was the last one to make the decision. It was, you know, that whole hire slowly, fire quickly. I should have let him go earlier. It became very cancerous. The best part of the story is, though, that the next boss's day, they gave me my own bamboo.
You touched on a couple of things. One is being true to yourself. And let me put a slightly different spin on it, and that is being honest. Not only being honest with yourself, but being honest with everybody around you. We, at least from my perspective, we all have this tendency of wanting to make ourselves look as best as possible at all possible times.
I would say wanting to be liked for me. Early in my company, it was wanting to be liked.
Yes.
5 Temptations of a CEO. If you haven't read that book, it's a great book. One of the temptations is the need to be liked, and it'll bring you down every time.
To be liked, to be known, to be respected. And I don't know about you, but you raised the whole imposter syndrome. Feeling like an imposter, that I or you or anybody else, we really shouldn't be where we are doing what we're doing because we feel like we're a fake and fraud. And so what do? We have a tendency at times of putting on facades and fronts. And one of the things that it was a very, very brutal, ugly lesson, but one of the things that I learned very early on is the sooner that I became really honest with myself and my strengths and weaknesses, the sooner I could be honest with everybody else. And once that happened, the entire dynamic between myself and everybody else around me began to change. Because when people, at least for me, as an entrepreneur, it's doggone difficult to build a company with a team. It's even tougher to build it by yourself. And you need help. And if you can't be honest with the people who are trying to help you, then who are you going to be honest with? So when you talk about being true to yourself and honesty, I'm assuming that's something that you really look for in the people that you work with and work for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say I probably fall on the other end of the spectrum from that. I'm pretty darn transparent. And sometimes that's not helped me in my career because I am not going to play games. And so what you see is what you get. And if, you read my book, it's like sitting down and talking to me because there's no different me from here or anywhere else. And so that can be a challenge, though, too, because people expect something different from you. But I think it also makes it easier to build relationships with your team. But then you still have to be the boss, and that's where you get into that trap of wanting to be liked. Because I can remember we instituted, one of the big things in my company was work-life balance, right? I want everybody to be able to have a work-life balance. But what I learned the hard way was that it wasn't work-life balance for everyone at the expense of the company, because it started to get where I had my receptionist come and ask me if she could work from home. She was my receptionist. Yeah. And this was before you could have a virtual phone system, and she could answer the phone from her home and everything. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work. And so what I finally realized is that I had to put in stronger policies of fairness, and that actually one of my managers that I hired that worked out, Greg Goodwin, great guy, he was really helpful for me. And he said, you know what, Julie? He said, it's better to be fair and respected than to be liked. And I really like that, because then, you're the steward of the business. And as much as you want everybody to succeed in your company or around you, you can't make them succeed. You can't do it for them. And you cannot sacrifice your business for other people. But then I will tell you that we had a woman whose mother was ill with cancer, and we gave her as much time off with pay as we could. So there's a difference between being human and allowing, having compassion, and then, letting people walk all over you. So it's a tough line, but you have to, the business, you have to really consider the business. Not everybody's going to like the decisions that you make, and you have to be okay with that.
Give us a couple of other examples of where you had to straddle both sides of that fence, if you have them.
Of being liked and So I have a confession to make, and I don't know that I've ever told anybody else this because it's really embarrassing. The very first person that I had to fire was an older woman. She was a developer. She was a delightful lady. She baked my daughter's cakes and cupcakes on their birthday, but she was a net negative in the company, if you know what that means. So the amount of time that it took everybody else to help her, she did not have a positive contribution to the company. And we were small. At this time, I think we were probably 16 people or so. And so I knew that I needed to let her go. The morning that I was going in to let her go, I was sick to my stomach. I couldn't do it. I had another manager fire her for me. And you know what she said? She said, Julie couldn't do it, could she? I was busted. That was the last time that happened, but it was a big lesson for me. It was, and those of you who do have people or who manage people, it never gets easier, or should never get easier to fire people. But what I realized is that I needed to do a better job of managing expectations and communicating expectations, so that when it came time to fire someone, they would not be surprised. Or if they were surprised, it was their fault, because I had communicated what I expected. I'd communicated when they were not meeting my expectations. And then we put a plan in place, and it was very clear then when it was time for them to go, it was time to go. And so that was a big lesson, and a very, very early lesson, but a very painful lesson. And I'd love to say that was the only time I had to fire somebody, but it wasn't, because I had to fire one of my marketing guys because we went to a trade show, and I was paying him to do marketing, and he called me the day that the trade show opened. There was the opening thing. I said, all right, I'll meet you in the lobby. And he's like, I'm going to watch the Ravens game. I'll meet you later. And I said, excuse me? I'm paying for you to be here, and I'm paying for you to be at this conference, and you're my business development person, and you're going to watch? No, I'll meet you in the lobby. And so he met me in the lobby begrudgingly. He was a young single guy. Then he met a very cute young woman, and he spent the rest of the conference palling around with her, going from session to session, and I was just done. He also argued with me that no marketing person should have to do any cold calling. I said, dude, if you've got enough, of these leads that you feel like you're not closing any business. Anyway, so I had to let him go. And it was a really hard thing for me to do, because I liked the guy. But I also knew that it was clear that he had to go. So I can remember every person that I've had to let go, and none of them were ever pleasant, but they did get clearer once I started getting clearer with expectations, and here's what I need you to do, and here's, how we behave. And, you look at companies that have all these policies and stuff, and the policies are put in because somebody broke them. at some point. When we started our company, we had 3 basic policies: no photocopying body parts, no fish in the microwave. Really, our office was smaller than this, and the bathroom was right in the middle. That was not a good thing either. And no, don't take the last Diet Dr. Pepper from the refrigerator, because that's mine. Let's see, what other failures do we have? We have lots of them.
So the first time that you had to fire, or you thought you were going to fire,
And I got sick.
but you punted it to somebody else. What was the process that you went through to get yourself to the point where, while you never are comfortable, we're never comfortable having to let somebody go, what was the process that you went through to get yourself to the point where you at least had the confidence and the internal guts to be able to do it?
Well, I'll say I never liked doing it. It was never anything that I looked forward to. I only once had to fire somebody on the spot. And it was a clear breach of ethics, where she found out that she was not the first person that we had extended an offer for her position. This was my bookkeeper and office manager, right? So she had my books. She was doing my finances. She found out that she was the second choice, so to speak, or that we had extended an offer to somebody else. And she became so obsessed with this that she went into my HR manager's office while she was at lunch to get on her computer and forward the original woman's resume to herself and tried to delete the trail. So I found this resume on the printer, and I'm like, why is this resume here? And I finally pieced it together. I went in and she tried to cover her trail on the HR manager's computer, but I know how to, you can see this message was forwarded at blah, 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 even though she deleted the sent mail. And I just, that was like one of those moments where I was very clear. Breach of ethics, you're out of here. And she pleaded and she begged, and I said, I'm sorry. Regardless of what you do in my company, but you also do my books. I can't trust you. And so that was a clear one. But the rest of them were all, I got a lot better at communicating expectations, and we actually hired a consultant to come in and help us create a performance management system around our key competencies. And I didn't want to get too bureaucratic. I wanted it to be helpful. I love helping people to develop. That's my favorite part of being a manager, is helping them to achieve their goals, helping them to grow and to expand and to be successful. And so that's the way I started looking at my role as a manager, and setting expectations and everything is, I'm helping you, help me help you, kind of thing. And that's when it made it easier. And so I can't tell you the number of people that by the time you go through that process and then you actually let them go, they know that it's time for them to go. And in some cases, they're actually relieved because they're not performing. And how does it feel good? It doesn't feel good when you're not performing. As a person, it kills your sense of confidence. So kind of look at it as you're really doing them a favor in many cases if they're not in the right job.
Couldn't agree more.
Right.
Let's talk about your current position and your current loves and your vision for this position. Now that the University of Maryland has joined the real world and come into the Big Ten, I can now say that I rousingly support University of Maryland, except for when they play Purdue, which is my alma mater, but that's okay. But you raised a point about having a lot of incredible things happening, but not communicating them to the outside world that they're happening. I see that a lot at my alma mater. So tell us what you're doing and what you want to do, and the initiatives and the programs and the things that those in the community and outside of the community may find interesting, and what opportunities are there out there for us?
So one of the first things that, so I have the Office of Technology Commercialization is underneath me, and they've been without a leader for a little over a year. Part of what we're trying to do, my vision is to create or get rid of the barriers to doing business with the university. And so making it easy to license from the university, creating express licenses for startups especially, not requiring cash up front. We still have to ask for patent reimbursement, but finding a better way to do shared risk with startups so that you can actually help them grow and not be a hindrance to them growing. We had, where we would sit and we would try to negotiate over 5 percentage points of royalty. And I said, no, this is bullshit, because most of these companies aren't going to succeed anyway. We're wasting all this time negotiating over, just get it out. And the more we get out, the more people will come to us and want to license. And it's a numbers game. The more we can get out there and give them the support to be successful, the better our chances of having some really good outcomes. And so that's part of it. One of the things at the University of Maryland that they're sorely missing is support for faculty-led tech startups and those who are doing tech commercialization. And so we're looking to fill that gap and helping the whole continuum of, there's a whole cultural shift that needs to happen. Any of you faculty anywhere? So you get that some people have a different mindset that is not necessarily aligned with innovation and Well, I don't even care about entrepreneurship. I'm not, because very few faculty can or should be entrepreneurs. But I've even heard faculty telling their graduate students not to waste their time in commercializing something, and that's unacceptable. You can, if it's not right for you, great, but don't ruin your students' opportunities. Don't limit your students' opportunities for success, because if they're a graduate student, they're a PhD, their chances of getting into academia are like less than 10%. You got to give them something else. And so, culture change, we're creating a faculty committee on innovation culture. So the faculty themselves, we're getting innovative faculty to figure out what are the policies, procedures, programs, interventions that we can do to help drive more innovation across the campus and across the faculty. And it's got to come from them. It can't come from me. But I'm helping to facilitate that. The other thing that we're focused on, and my time at Commerce, the communities that were the most successful did a great job of bringing the outside in. So they did a really good job of bringing customers for their startups, for bringing mentors for their startups, for service providers for the startups. It's something I think we did well at the MCE with the Howard Tech Council. But at the University of Maryland, they don't have that, other than the alumni ties, which aren't even really mined for that. That's something else that we're looking at, is how do we mine our alumni to be mentors and investors and supporters for our startups, but how do we engage private sector companies? We do a lot with the government. Of our $550 million research budget, about 16 million of that is with the private sector. So it's about 3%. It's a really small percentage. Now, if we can even double that, now we've got private sector coming in and telling and helping our researchers understand what are the problems they're trying to solve. What are some real applied opportunities to come up with some inventive solutions? And there's another culture problem there, because not all researchers believe in applied research, and so we're working on that too, the kind of intersection of applied and basic research. In a big institution, any academic institution, the policies can often get in the way of entrepreneurship and innovation. And so we're really working hard on conflict of interest policies, simplifying them. As I say, it's really important that we are able to spawn commercial entities, but we have to do it transparently, consistently, and fairly, because we are operating under public sector money. And that's something I learned in the government, is that we can do these kinds of things, but we have to do them right, or we risk being able to do them at all. And so I'll go behind the scenes and fight for policy changes, trying to understand. A lot of times it'll come in the guise of, this is like a legal opinion, but it's not really a legal issue, it's a policy issue. And I'll challenge that line and say, where's the legal? Tell me what's legal. We're going to be legal and we're going to be ethical, but I want to understand what the policy is, because there may be something that's an old mindset that we need to shift. And I'm doing a lot of that. And so it's going to be a slow build, I think, because these things take time. But it's worth it because I see the incredible innovation that's going on. And if we can just start to unleash even a quarter of it, and really start to tell the story, to engage other companies and other outsiders to come in. Now, if you've been through College Park in the last year, there's $1 billion worth of development going on campus in construction and $1 billion going on out in the community by the private sector. It's amazing what's happening there. There's a co-working space going in across from campus. There's actually lots of music venues, some cool coffee shops, a hotel, a brand new 4-star hotel across the street from campus. Catty corner to the Brendan Arib Center for Advanced Computing. Brendan Arib was a co-founder of Oculus, and he gave us $30 million and is making all these investments. So what I'm doing is I'm also working to make sure that these investments that we're making in the infrastructure, that we have the innovation and the startups and the energy to kind of that meets the infrastructure that we're building. And I will say, because I have a couple of folks, one of the other organizations that I inherited is the SBDC. And so one of the first things, as I said, do people know here that we have an SBDC? Majority of people did not. And that's going to change. And I know, Kyle, we were, somebody just mentioned your name today, that the Startup Shell. I was talking to the folks from David Engel from the Startup Shell. Yeah.
He's exactly the kind of entrepreneur you're looking for.
I met with him. I spent an hour with him this morning. Yeah. Yeah. And so some people know that the SBDC exists on campus and throughout the communities, but we need to help bring it up. It's an incredible resource, and I think it needs to be brought into a broader scope and included in more of what we do, and even resourced to the point where, get the T back in SBTDC. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about.
They just got rid of it, though.
Yeah. That's not intentional, I don't think.
It's a brand issue.
But having that technology, yeah, expanding the technology capabilities and focus and giving you the resources that you need to do that.
Perfect segue into something that I'm going to ask each of you to do, and that is just take a couple of seconds, because I see a couple of people who have been feverishly writing notes, and that is, what are some of the takeaways that we've been able to give you tonight that you'll be able to apply when you leave here? And, as we talk, write them down. But one of the things that I'm asking everybody to do is don't just listen and then walk away and forget them. Write them down, because that's the only way that you're ever going to remember them and act on them. Now, throwing it out, questions for Julie and, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not a female entrepreneur, but I've worked with 80 or more every year, and I really desperately need to understand, what is the difference? How is it different being a female?
Well, I've never been a male entrepreneur, so I can't tell you that. But interestingly, when I started teaching the Activate program, it was a women's program, a women's entrepreneurship program, and I questioned whether or not we really needed something separate for women, because starting a business is starting a business is starting a business, regardless of who you are, where you came from, or what gender or race, whatever you are. However, I will say that what I learned really quickly is that women do tend to need some additional things. They don't often have the networks that men do. And I would say it's not just women, it's also, any underrepresented group doesn't usually have the network of people who have tons of money to invest in their startup, or who went to Harvard, and we just don't have the same types of networks generally. We don't. A lot of networks are, for men are formed through sports, and it's just different. So I would say networks are different. Women are often, what I found in Activate, so Activate was for mid-career women. And when you get to a certain point in your career, you feel pretty confident, you're used to knowing what you're doing, and then all of a sudden, you're going to pivot and go start a business where you'll realize very quickly that you don't know what the hell you're doing. And it's intimidating. And what we found is that even the most confident women professionally would get out and try to pitch their business, and they wouldn't be confident. And so having a safe space where you can learn and grow, and get uncomfortable. It's not to say that women should keep their women's groups over here and they should never, because that's actually a problem. And there's some women's groups that do that because that's not real world. But to the extent that you can have a role model or a mentor that can help you, that you trust and that you feel comfortable with, it doesn't have to be another woman, it can be a guy, but being able to have that trusted relationship that I can admit to you that I don't know what the hell I'm doing, or that I can stand up and give my elevator pitch even though I'm maybe not 100% that it's right, or I'm going to flub it up, or I'm not going to do it as well as I should, that I can learn and fail and try again in a safe space. I think that's important for a lot of women. But also then I mentioned the role models. I think role models is really helpful. There's more now than there ever was. Certainly when I was starting my company, especially in manufacturing, I was almost always the only woman in the room and at the table. And so having those role models, having people that can help show you the way, whether they're male or female, is actually really important. I actually had more guy friends than women, and it wasn't until I really got into Activate that I started to build these really rich female friendships. And but it wasn't like that growing up. It wasn't like that in college. It wasn't even like that in my career. So I think that so networks, confidence, especially negotiating skills. I think those are some of the things that I saw the most that women, and I don't mean all women, certainly, because just like all men are not the same, all women are not the same, but in general, that's what I found they really needed was just a little boost in some places, and sometimes a little hard kick sometimes to get out there, because they probably are incredibly competent, they just don't have the confidence.
I'll follow up. Actually, I grew up in Texas as well,
All right.
but I didn't take the job at IBM. I went to another company called MCI, and so I tell people that I went through 3 tech books, and we're in the 3rd one right now. And the first one was the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
The infrastructure is what we call the internet. The second one was the transaction of the internet. And then I went to work for a company called Carfax Vehicle History Reports. And in 5 years, we grew revenue over 400%. And when I was at NBCI, though, the person that I met who was my mentor, who was younger than me, was a woman.
That's awesome.
And it is. It was awesome. And I learned so much from her. And what she does today is she is the CEO of the American Motion Picture Association. And I still stay in touch with her today. And so, just to say, it is, if you do find that person, no matter if you're male or female, you can't look at them as the gender. You have to look at them as what do they offer you. But getting back to what you were talking about earlier and what the university can do and what the NBC can do, and I think we do have a huge opportunity. I mean, we have a database of 25,000 years of data of small businesses.
I know.
Why aren't we mining that?
Well, I'm working on a grant for the EDA. The Regional Innovation Strategies grant is coming out, so I was going to reach out to you this week anyway. We're going after it. It's the one that I created when I was at Commerce. Now we're going to go after it.
It's all about disruption, and that's what we need right now, even in academia, and I totally agree with you.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Thanks. You have a question?
Any other questions?
I was
Andy.
going to make comments that from something you were saying in your discussion, I thought was perfect, which was basically that one of the biggest misconceptions that when we just not talked about often entrepreneurship is you're going to fail, and you're going to fail often. And in fact, more than anything else, you're going to fail far more than you succeed. And just kind of doing a little retrospective of myself, I can clearly go back and just a couple of examples that come to my mind. I think of myself, oh yeah, I definitely failed far more than I've ever succeeded before.
Yep.
And I think that it seems to me, like there's also the scenario where you got to grow some thick skin, but you're always going to be growing thick skin. Does that sound?
Yeah. That's why I'm not going to be ever run for office, because I don't have thick enough skin. It's like I've been speaking publicly for a long time, and I can remember, you can still remember it, right? It was about 150 people in the audience. The reviews came back. 149 of them were really, really good, and there was one that said she really shouldn't try to be funny because she's not. See, I still remember that, right? Really, come on, I can be funny. And now I just realized I don't care. I crack myself up anyway. But yeah, I mean, so but failing is not really failing if you learn something from it. You fail forward, and that's
Learning kind of thing? Like validated learning kind of concept?
Yeah. I mean, you fail forward. You learn from it and you move on. I didn't even mention that I had a snack food company for 18 months. It was a gluten-free snack food company in 2006. We had a board of advisors. We spent some money doing some formulation. Then we finally were able to get some market data on what the profit margins and profit margins in food are horrible, like 2%. And at 2006, the gluten-free market was nothing. I mean, and look, it's taken, and now it's hitting, but 10 years, that would have been, we were ahead of our time, and so that was a fail. I also, when I first started my company, tried to do a Geek Squad type of a company. So back in 1995, I would go into your house and help you set up and train you on your computer. Guess how many people needed that service back in 1995? It's not hard to get onto Prodigy or AOL because that's what they were doing. So I had a lot of those failures, but I kind of learned that you just have to, that was not the time. That timing is everything. I actually wrote some children's software for my daughter when she was growing up. It was called Banging Babies, and it was didn't go anywhere. She loved it.
Yes.
I don't know if you're going to talk to that slide.
I can.
But time is my enemy, and I can't get enough of that. Talk a little bit about that.
So I will talk to this slide really quickly. This is what my team at the Commerce Department put behind my desk on my 1-year anniversary. It's a 52-inch wide fat head of the Incredible Hulk. And they had it breaking through red tape. What's really funny, and Tracy just left the room, but before I left here, they covered my desk, my computer, my chair, my phone, my stapler in red tape, saying, you're going to redtape.gov, you're going to when I was going to the federal government. And then after the first year, they put that there about getting stuff done. I think the really important thing about getting stuff done is prioritizing, and you get the whole urgent versus important, Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants. Is it really urgent? Trying to get to the important, not urgent, before it becomes urgent, and being able to say no. I've had to get better at saying no. I could have coffee and lunch every day of the week out of the office if I wanted to, but I can't, because then I don't get my work done. I try to do it as much as I can and try to be responsive, but you have to be a little selfish with your time, because you have to focus on what are you really here to achieve? What do you have to get done? And you have to be able to prioritize. And I think one of the other slides I had up there was the rubber and the glass balls. Let me see if I can get that back. They talk about you're always juggling things, we're juggling all these balls and stuff, but the reality is some of them are rubber and some of them are glass. Some of them will bounce if you drop them, and some of them will shatter. And your job is to figure out which is rubber and which is glass. But here's the trick. They change. So something that is glass today or rubber today could be glass tomorrow. My daughter got her wisdom teeth out this past weekend. She's 21. She's a big girl. But she asked me if she could come stay with me and could I come and help her? That was a glass ball to me. Her health, my daughter, she's normally out and about and she's a rubber ball. I'm sorry, dear, I can't make it tonight, whatever, she's fine with it. But, they change. And so recognizing, is this going to break and can I recover this if I drop this? Or is it going to be okay? And a lot of times it's going to be okay. And so I would just say, it's really hard, but I write my goals up on my wall so I can look at them all the time. What are my top 4 things I need to get done? Figure out what your top, no more than 3 to 5, and put them up on your wall. And as you're working through your day and you start getting distracted with something, look back up and say, is this working me towards these goals? And if not, you might want to put it aside or delegate it, even better.
I want to thank you very much. Andy, you brought up a very interesting topic, and I'd like to leave this segment of our program with the following thought, and that is 56% of all entrepreneurs and small businesses fail within the first year. 95% of us fail within the first 5 years, which means only 5% of us make it beyond year 5. But there was my father, God bless him, taught me one lesson, and that is, he said, Chris, the only time that you fail is when you refuse to get up and you walk off the field and never come back. And that's always stuck with me, and that's what I try. Yeah. If you're not failing, you're not taking enough risks. So, Julie, thank you so very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Julie for being here.
Hashtag GSD.
I would like to introduce our featured local startup, Anna Elhini. Okay. Here, why don't you grab that one?
Okay, you want me to sit here too?
She is founder and managing director, along with her husband, of an organization called Creatrix. And there is a write-up that hopefully everybody got a copy of when you came in. That's a little 2-page executive summary about her company, and where they are. And Anna, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it's Anna Elhini, and that's okay. You can Elhini, Elhini, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's my married name, so I'm not quite as tied to it as I am with my maiden name, I guess. So a little bit about Creatrix. We're an identity management company. We primarily work in software engineering, systems integration, systems engineering with expertise in biometrics, vetting, credentialing, and case management. We are a services company as well as a product company, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. We are a woman-owned small business, as I am the owner. My co-founder and partner is my husband. We have owned the company as long as we've been married, so surprisingly, both have been successful. Therapy has helped, though, and we have been in business since 2006. So we're going on 11 years. A little bit about me. I actually came to be an entrepreneur by way of marriage and my husband. I was actually not an entrepreneur. As a woman, I was kind of a perfectionist as well as risk averse, as so many are. And it was really my husband starting his own tech company and working with the federal government and deciding that he wanted to go out on his own. And he had actually a few companies before we even met. And then about 3 years ago, I could supplant my VP income. I was actually worked in App Associates and at Nielsen, formerly Arbitron, as a survey research methodologist, and have 50 publications to my name and things like that. So I never thought I would actually ever get out of that field. And then about 3 years ago, I found myself at a company here in Columbia, which I don't name, but it was not a good experience. I reported directly to the founder and owner of that company, and we did not get along. And so I abruptly left and said, what the hell am I doing with my life? And my husband said, why don't you join our company? We have our own company. What are you doing working for other people? Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not a tech person. I have a master's in stats, but I was an English and psych major. I really wanted to be a child development person. I had all these weird, because I was a perfectionist, I was a very good student and a graduate valedictorian and went on full scholarship to Emory. And so I had always had the wide world out there. So it was never, what do I want to do with my life? So I listened to him and said, okay, I'll come over. And so, and it was kind of like falling off a cliff, and hopefully you're going to have a parachute. And luckily I had him, and also the fact that he had had the company for 7 years and had grown it, and it was a very well-respected company, albeit very small. And so as I came on, I really began focus on business development. I also did all the back of the house things, HR, all the books, which whoever has the bookkeeper, I think Julie mentioned having a bookkeeper, that's my next step. It's the one thing I'd like to give away, which people say, well, you have a master's in stats. How do you not like numbers? It's completely different. Yes, and and I also have ADD and 3 brothers, so it's not, I also have 4 sisters too, so that might be part of the problem, the baby of 8. So sorry, a little bit enough about me, but just to know that I'm not your natural kind of serial entrepreneur, if you will. It was really by my husband believing in me and saying, you can do this. You've been successful at numerous companies before. Do it for us. I mean, why are you being billed at $250 an hour to the government when you're surely not making that much? And that was kind of the straw, and I said, okay. And I actually love it. I love interacting with people. I love, being part of HTC, Women in Tech, all of that. So And my husband, sorry he couldn't be here tonight, but he is the tech guru. So he's a computer and electrical engineer from Virginia Tech, has about 20 years experience in the field. And as I said, one of our specialties is biometrics. He's one of the 400 IEEE certified biometrics professionals in the U.S. One of our tagline is create, innovate, accelerate. But what we really like to say is we bring big business ability with small business agility and big business capabilities. Both my husband and I have worked for very large companies, have been very successful in those companies, save that last one, I was only there for a few months. And we really feel that that actually helps us to bring to our government clients as well as to our own people that we staff and employ. And so our kind of claim to fame is for the last 10 years, we've actually worked on the same DHS TSA program for the federal government. If you know anything about federal programs, as a subcontractor, you don't usually stay for 10 years, even as primes change. So we are a vital subcontractor on that. And my partner, husband, as well. And some people say, you shouldn't say husband, and sometimes I do slip and say honey in meetings, and I know I'm not supposed to, but we pride ourselves on that. We are a true mom and pop shop. We can get along at home, we can get along at work, and we actually provide you with very good service 24/7. So if you're offended by the fact that I call my husband in business meetings, it's not going to end. That's who he is. We're a team both in marriage and in company. And so what I like to say also is he's the only subcontractor employee that's actually able to talk to the government, the federal client. So the prime will actually put him in front of the government before they put their own senior managers, which is kind of remarkable if any of you are in the federal space. So before Leidos acquired Lockheed Martin, they came to us and said, hey, look, we're having some trouble with developing for our biometrics platform. Can you help us out? And I'm not exactly sure why. Clearly, Lockheed Martin has the development capabilities and expertise to do it. So it was probably just a vision thing. And so, and as Leidos has purchased them, we still continue to be the primary developers on the biometric system they call it ID Haystack. And again, you can see we have other customers. Clearly, our 10-year on a federal project is our main revenue source, and we have 13 employees that work on that with us. And then all of our other work, we actually do literally mom and pop. And so something we're very proud of, and I'll just let you kind of let this sink in, but here's some of our feedback from the federal government, and that we're very proud of. And so outside of our services to the federal government, we have developed our own middleware called Biometrics. It's a pre-integrated solution. So what we did based on our 10-year tenure in the government, we saw a lot of failures, a lot of money being wasted in systems integration of biometrics systems, the integration of biometric systems. And we said, we think we can actually help this problem. So literally on nights and weekends, my husband developed this middleware. And what it does is it takes the best of what's out there in terms of biometrics technologies and integrates it into one seamless middleware that's literally plug and play. So it really mitigates all the risks operationally, financially, things like that. This actually just rolled off the line, if you will, last year, late last year. And so we're just now in the market of attempting to market it and sell it. One of the things that it has actually gone into is this really cool handheld device. I wish I could have brought one with me, but I was unable to. And so this is a Wi-Fi enabled mobile biometric application. And so what it does is it actually has a screen on the front, and the user, it's actually one-handed and very, very light. And it's only 3 by 6 by 1.5. So the picture is makes it deceivingly look big, but it's actually quite small. And it's a one-handed use of, you can do fingerprint, iris, and also read it e-passport. And so if you think about certain agents in the field, especially those who may have firearms, having a one-handed unit to collect biometric data is actually very helpful, because then they also have one hand to be able to grab their firearm if need be. This can also include voice, face, anything you can think about in terms of that can be captured with a camera, an iris scan, anything like that. It's actually pretty revolutionary, because we use the iris camera to read the e-passport, and then we OCR the letters and numbers on the e-passport to actually process it. So it's a pretty cool thing. Again, this is literally, I think that was the first or second prototype that rolled off the 3D printer. Again, we're hopeful that this is going to come to some sort of sales in June of this year, which we'll be very happy about because we've worked a long time on that. And again, I just wanted, before we got into kind of our challenges or struggles, if you will, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about who we are, and a little bit more about, I think, if you have the sheet of paper in front of you that Chris asked me to fill out, I think what distinguishes us from other companies, clearly we have 10 years on a federal program as a subcontractor. We also are very honest, and I know a lot of companies will say we're very honest, but we are. We pay our people very fairly. We do not believe in egregious margins on people. Sometimes I hear when we have government contractors come to us and want to work for us what I hear they make, and it's actually saddening to me, both men and women. It's this, in my experience, some people say, well, women don't ask for it, but in my opinion, this is across the board. And so what these small companies are making off some of their people, to me, is a sin. And so we pay our people very well. We will not lie in a proposal. We will not stretch the truth. There are a lot of people, and you'll hear small companies, we're biometrics experts, and I'm thinking, what do? They unlock their iPhone. That is something that we don't do. And sometimes that may lose us a contract because we know people who will embellish things that they've done, or, there's one person on their staff 10 years ago who worked on this. And so we just don't do that because we don't believe in overselling and undercommitting. So we want to be who we are, and we want to perform it very well. Same goes with being a woman-owned small business. It's something I do not lead with. It is a great thing to be able to check if you can. But again, I don't want to be hired, my company be hired because it's a woman-owned small business. I want to be hired because we have the capabilities and the intelligence and the integrity to do the business and to do it well. So are you ready for some challenges?
Okay. Let's throw them out there. Go ahead.
Okay, great.
What are you struggling with right now? What problems, what opportunities and think about it in this terms, okay? You're a woman-owned small business. You are a female founder. You are a female entrepreneur. Are any of the challenges that you're going to communicate with us, how do they play if it were a male-dominated company, would things be any different? And how are you overcoming that barrier, if there's a barrier?
I don't believe there's a barrier. I think that might be a question for maybe other people who may perceive a woman-owned business to be different than a man-owned business. But I've never felt that. I've been very blessed pretty much in my entire life never to have a man in a meeting sit across from me and say, what the hell are you doing here? I've been very thankful for that. And maybe it is because I had the three brothers and they were older, so they could maybe, get into a fight. But, I was very lucky. And even as a woman-owned small business, I don't think that has hindered us or helped us in any way. It's really been our, legacy of good work that has really put us where we are.
Okay, so your challenges.
So, of course, for us, it's diversifying in the government space. We have been with DHS and, with TSA under DHS for 10 years. We would like to diversify. Again, we have the struggle of being a mom and pop shop in terms of writing large proposals and trying to prime in other agencies. So, and over the last year or so, we have bid, if you will, or written RFIs even to try to get our foot in the door at other agencies. So that, of course, is one. You always want to have a diversified portfolio as a business owner because, all eggs in one basket. We all know what happens to that. So that's definitely our biggest challenge and one that we are actively working toward. Two, we want to, based on our biometrics middleware, even the UBIX, with our partner company i3 out of Blacksburg, want to break into commercial work. Where we see the need of biometrics in the commercial field is healthcare, both in terms of data, but also in terms of patient identification, as well as even medicine dispensary. So you have a narcotic and the nurse is trying to dispense it and then get rid of it, and how that happens, and if there's a biometric based security feature you could do there. In addition to healthcare, we also see a need for it in finance, obviously with data, and then you also have a customer service aspect of banking. So if you think about a facial recognition as you're coming into a bank, oh, hello, Mr. Smith, how are you doing today? And their account's already brought up. Or if there had been a problem with their, a lot of the fraud alerts are coming out, and you're all of a sudden you use your ATM card, and oh my gosh, you can't use it, and you're like, oh great, as soon as you go into the bank, it's like, oh, we know why you're here. So we see a lot of benefit in terms of using biometrics in the commercial space. Again, it's just trying to get into that. And I mean, clearly we have sales training, and very lucky as a small mom and pop, both my husband and I do have good deal of sales training and being able to get in the door and get to decision makers. But again, it's really having people see the need for biometrics, and the hope that they say, okay, well, maybe a small company can do this because you've been doing biometrics now for 15 years, even before your own company.
Can I stop you
Sure.
right there? Okay. So, if you will, tell us, how can we help you? How can the Startup Grind community help you and Creatrix?
Right. Well, I always believe in connections are always great to have. Networking, friendships, those things. Two, if you have any friends or colleagues in the fields that I mentioned, either at government agencies and or commercial firms that would like to see a pretty cool middleware, and or, people always like to see something. So, you talk about middleware, and it's this kind of esoteric, kind of nebula kind of idea, and then but you actually show them this really cool biometric device and how it works, a demo for that. So, I think it would be, those kinds of introductions, or if there's any other suggestions. I mean, I'm open. I tend to. I've learned over the last 10 years. I try to have a thick skin, and I will take feedback, both negative and positive, and I'll also take help in any which way.
Okay, so your biggest challenge right now is diversification.
Correct.
And you want to move. You want not necessarily away from the government, but you want to diversify within the government, and as well as begin to penetrate the commercial sector. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And specifically, what are you doing right now to make that happen?
Well, we have a lot of meetings in the works. We also do trade shows, our large biometrics conferences. We also do cyber through the Cyber 8 conference that's coming up through the Howard County Chamber. So we have booths there, connections, finding vehicles of the government. So some of you have maybe heard of, Oasis and Eagle 2, finding the primes on there, whether they're small or large primes, and trying to, show them our products.
Community, how can you help?
I think in terms of diversifying and going with the government, you really need to laser your focus, because the government is so big. Find that one agency that is your target agency and hit them up and hit them heavy. Be strategic, and just like anyone else, the government wants to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And your small business advocates there, those are the people that they're hired to work on your behalf. So I think that where all the new technologies and things that you guys are creating are concerned, find a clever way to market it to them, because you certainly have a solution to a problem that they have. You just have to learn how to sell the solution to them.
Okay, thank you.
Andy.
Just to add to that, actually, I completely agree. I think laser focus is good, and an area that I know, because I have experience in this area, unfortunately, an area that you could definitely laser focus in. One thing that I saw up on the screen of the product you have is that the physical product you have is actually quite small. Mm-hmm. And I'd be willing to bet that thing does not contribute much weight at all to an individual. The reason why I say that is because when we were in Iraq, weight was at a premium. Weight was very much at a premium. It was not uncommon for us to walk around with 100 pounds for the year. And sometimes it was the mere fact of saying, oh, we're going to give you this new piece of equipment, and the manufacturer or the contractor took no consideration to the fact that weight was a premium. And then when we said, oh, well, it's just 5 or 6 pounds, what's 5 or 6 pounds more? I was like, well, I'm already carrying 100, so every little bit you're adding to me definitely does not make life easier for me. So to be able to laser focus on a particular area, if you were to go through, say, the Army's SBIR and say, hey, we have a biometric solution for you, and oh, by the way, we're not going to add to the weight of the individual who's out there, but we can still provide you a secure solution. I can speak to you as a former soldier. I would love that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Anna.
Thank
Oh,
you.
So one thing I would suggest is you mentioned that you're interested in using it in healthcare. So I've done a lot of work with building of hospitals. We do it through the Army Corps of Engineers Initial Outfitting and Transitioning Project. And in that sort of space of building, we're responsible for low voltage, all the security systems. If you're interested, you might be interested in talking to the Army Corps of Engineers, probably out of Huntsville, asking for the IO&T for healthcare, what are they using for security? And that might be one way.
Great.
And
Can I
also-
shoot you an email?
Yes, I will send you a photo remind you. And also, I did see a lot of biometrics in Italy. Almost every single bank had them, and
Yes.
it must be really integrated because every single person knew exactly where to look to get the door open, you know, where to put your finger, unless you were like me and my hubby, who were like, what do we do now? We're stuck in
Right,
this
yeah,
box.
yeah, Europe has adopted biometrics. I mean, kind of like they adopted the mobile phone craze before we did here.
Yes.
And then went, mobile only. They were also extremely apt to use biometrics. I mean, we as Americans still have a sense of, that security and privacy and who's watching us and things like that. And so, but it is really cool. We were going to work with a company actually on one of the former Soviet republics and their banking, but chose not to given our ties to the federal government here. But thank you very much.
Yeah, you said you're going to scale. You want to try to scale both in the public and private sector. So I've heard some comments about the public sector, but on the private side, what is it that you're looking? I mean, there has to be something that's just very intuitive. I sort of call it the Katrina factor, and that is, the levee. It's not a problem until the levee breaks. So is there something out there that you can really focus on and say, you really need to be careful? What's something that's very intuitive that business or an industry can look at and say, I really need to solve this problem before it happens?
I'll have to think about that. I mean, there's just so many in the data side of things that you can think of. I mean,
And narrow it down to what's a low-hanging fruit. Is there something that just seems
Okay, time for one more. Go ahead.
Sure. Just got me thinking as you were looking at biomedical applications. What about expansion into playing the middleware role in the Internet of Things that's coming? So getting into the home devices, being able to customize and identify individual family members, and getting things like Alexa working properly to the individual, curating to individual family members. Also think the secondary healthcare revolution that's coming is more in-home care.
Right.
That's going to explode in the next 20 years. And what can biometrics bring to in-home care as an emerging industry?
I like that. Thank you.
Yes, Ellen.
Well, I was just going to say, and Julie probably would know about College Park, but I think at Johns Hopkins in the health area.
You can't mention Johns Hopkins in front of Julie. She's University of Maryland.
I know. I'm just thinking about some hospital systems will have innovation centers where they actually will welcome small companies to come in and try out technology because it's a big space right now in terms of health tech. So looking around at even some of the area hospital systems, you might find a unit like that that would be friendly for you to try out.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion.
One last one. Go ahead, Chuck.
And thanks for talking. It's great to learn about your organization. One of the things that stands out to me that I think is a big decision that you probably need to make sooner rather than later is, do you want to do this diversification in-house or outsourced? Because you guys are very good at innovation, but you're going to get into a separate business if you want to actually get into the sales component.
Mm-hmm.
So do we outsource that to another organization that's already in that space, already has those connections, so you can continue to keep focusing on innovating the next product?
That's a good point. It's something that we've actually discussed.
Just to add licenses, you may consider partnering.
Right.
with someone with sharing some profits who has access to that market.
Right. On the manufacturing side, we would partner with other people. That's not our forte. But it is a question that we do have, and that my husband and I do speak about often. And also keep in mind that he's 100% billable to the federal government on our DHS program. So, I mean, he's literally so it is one of those things that, what do we do here? And how much do we want to keep it in-house and then external? So, but again, we hope at least the middleware aspect of it will be kind of kept in-house, if you will, and then we would license and have third-party distributors and things like that, and for any of the actual devices or manufacturing of those would be somewhere else. But thank you.
Okay, we're running out of time, and I hate to cut it short because I hope everybody's enjoying this, but we do have to wrap things up. However, Anna and Julie are going to be here until all the questions and all the comments and all the help is, is provided, or at least I would hope. So please feel free to connect with Julie and with Anna here in the last few minutes.